You.
Thank you so much. Okay, so here we are at GitHub, and this is going to be the tool that we're using to both organize our iterations as well as to kind of keep track of everything and have it be published somewhere that's not local on our computer. We don't want to keep everything in one space because things can happen to it. We want to make sure that we're pushing it somewhere where it can be seen and used. And there are different methods for doing that. If you already have some coding experience, you may be familiar with GitHub, but for those of you that aren't, this is a free service that you can sign up for, and it tracks all of the projects that you do. So we're going to go ahead and start a new repository here in a little bit. But first, let's discuss what kind of a project we want to start with. I wanted to make this a little bit interactive so that you guys can kind of participate along with me. And the first thing that we're going to do is start with a website called Coolers. And this helps us to kind of define a palette so that we can have something of a base to work with for as we're vibe coding and creating a design system for Figma to use. This sunny beach day, it's got some good darks, some good mids, and some light there. So all I'm going to do is take a screenshot here of my colors that have the hex code right here of all the different colors along with the names. And we're going to go over to Google Gemini. You don't have to use Google Gemini. Any of the kind of coding apps works for this first initial part. And just to give you kind of an idea of what we're going to do is we're going to use a coding or an LLM to create the prompt that we're going to use for Figma Make. Figma Make is what we're going to be using today to kind of iterate on our idea and see what kind of we want to come up with. If anybody has any requests or anything that they'd like to see done, maybe you've struggled with something in Figma that you know want to see if maybe the Figma Make can overcome, let me know in the chat while I start putting the information into the LLM here to kind of give us a prompt. So we're going to tell it, oops, if I get my caps lock off, make me a prompt for Figma Make to create a web app because that's what we want to make. Um, and I'm going to give it context for what I'm trying to create. And forgive my spelling. Oops, I really can't spell.
As Chandra is putting in the
Yeah.
prompt, I did also want to know, like, maybe why you would want to start in an LLM like Gemini or ChatGPT. As ASU students, we get like free pro access to Gemini, and I think education access to
Yes.
ChatGPT. And it can be really helpful to start here with your prompt because you really want to make sure you're giving as much context as possible to an AI prototyping tool like Figma Make, because your output is going to be significantly better. And I recently Figma Make has released new updates where they're now going to be keeping track of your token usage, which just means that you're going to have like a limit to how many prompts you can actually submit within Figma Make. So that just basically means that it would be really helpful to start in something like ChatGPT or Gemini to make your prompt and iterate it a little bit more in this phase. And then by the time you actually bring it into Figma Make, you don't have to use so many of your tokens, just reiterating your prompt. It's more going to be based on like making those final edits to your design. So just wanted to give some context there.
Yes, definitely. And you'll see here in a moment when we put in this prompt, it's good to use all of this natural language when you're first starting a prompt. And we're using Gemini simply because Gemini is the kind of free for ASU students, especially Gemini Pro is free for students. So that kind of reduces the barrier. When I normally do this, I'm using this for um, like I'm using this on Claude. Usually Claude integration works much better with Figma. It works much better with like Claude Code. So generally that's the first thing that I go to is Claude. But since it's a paid service, I want to create options for you to be able to have kind of free for ASU students entry level kind of ways of doing this where it doesn't cost you anything. When I do use Claude, I do use the paid membership, and I believe that that may be coming down the road for ASU students, but it's not quite there yet. So this is a way to get started, and I feel like it's really important to know more than one tool. Because like the other week in a workflow, I was working with Claude Code and Claude went down for like 6 hours. And I was completely frozen until I remembered, oh yeah, I have other tools that I can use. And so I switched over to anti-gravity, which is what we're going to be using today. So it's always good to have multiple options of things that you can do so that if your service gets shut down for some reason, like we had issues with Amazon AWS the other day, kind of ruined everybody's workflow for a while, you have other methods of getting the results that you need. So, let me go ahead. And I see somebody had a hand raised. Did we
Yeah,
answer their question?
yeah. Quick question. You said the AI tools like Gemini are free
Mhm.
for
For
and
ASU students, yes.
yes. How do we get them?
So if you go to your Canvas, or your dashboard, you can go to, I believe it's online backpack,
Okay.
and they have a link there to download it. You can also go to Gemini, and I believe they have I think it's Gemini slash students or something similar. And they have a link that if you log in with your ASU email address, you'll get Pro for free.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah, it is wonderful.
Oh,
I
you
am
have no
very
idea.
thankful for ASU's adoption of AI early on.
Yeah. I use Claude and yeah, and I pay for it. So
Yeah.
so free is good. Free is always good.
Free is a wonderful thing, and it makes
Yes,
me so happy that
yes.
they give us the ability to kind of iterate and work through these programs and learn them, right? Learn them
Right.
without paying for them. So let's see where we create single pages from the full image page. All right. Does anybody have any specific gripes when they're making a web app or when they're trying to create a web page that they want to add into this prompt? If you do, raise your hand. Other than that, just a little bit about prompting really quickly. It's a good idea that when you're creating a prompt, you want to give your AI a role. So in this case, we're going to tell Gemini that they are a professional UX designer. We're going to give it some inflated ego too. We're going to tell it it's a top tier UX designer. And we're going to say it's got 15 years of experience. And we're doing this very specifically for a very good reason. AI has lots of degrees of freedom, so they have the ability to kind of see things from pretty much any perspective, right? So if you don't give it a narrow flow to go through, it's going to try to jump to conclusions and see what it thinks you want, or it's going to randomize it. And you might end up having, what this website would look like from, a mechanical engineer standpoint. So we want to make sure that we're giving it guidance as to what sort of results we want and giving it that limited knowledge of, okay, this is where your focus is, helps us to do that. The other part of that is giving it that inflated ego, right? Telling it has 15 years of experience, that it's top tier, all of those things changes the signal in the AI so that it takes it more seriously. People use things like threatening their AI agents, yelling at them, like all kinds of things, and they get different results. And the reason for that is you change the level of threshold that the AI's decision making has so that it basically pays more attention to the things that you're yelling about. So we want to use that to our advantage, right, in this sort of situation. We're also going to give it context that we want this to be a long prompt. So I'm going to tell it, please make a thorough prompt. I'm not going to spell that correctly, and it's okay.
And it's also
One of the,
helpful to include like what tool you're going to be using, like how Chandra included she's going to be using Figma Make in her prompt.
yes.
That also gives good context to Gemini of like what how it should structure the final prompt.
Yes, exactly. So that is a very good point. You want to give it as much context as possible, including down to the kind of software that I would be using. So, for example, if I wanted this to specifically to be a React app, right? I'm going to give it that context now and let that know that this is what I'm coding in, right? Because that way it doesn't just choose randomly or try to make the decisions based off of what it thinks. So if you have a specific project and you already know what you're looking for, now is the time to add it in. You want to give this as much context as possible. And if your prompt is 5 paragraphs long, that's okay. For today's purposes, we're just going to create this relatively simple. But if you have the ability to kind of look at prompt engineering, I highly recommend that you follow some templates for prompt engineering to kind of give better context. For the purposes right now, we're just going to go ahead and see what this comes up with, and we'll move from there. So we've put in our colors here. You can also go ahead and give more context, right? You can upload more images of things that you like and talk about, oh, I like this web app's ability to use, reactive imagery here or something like that. That would be the time to add this in. You want to do this as much as possible because, like Kat was talking about earlier, you get the tokenization in Figma, and as a student, that's going to cost you. So if you have access to the free Gemini, work through your iterations in language as much as possible before you go over and start to actually prototype this. So let's see what we got here. So a thorough top-tier UX designer always starts with user goals and core functionality before visual design. Yes, we should, as UX designers, know this. So I love that it's got our problem statement here, our target user, what kind of vibe we want. So we're moving away from sterile corporate minimal design. Yes, we asked for less white space. So we want that rich and intimate, warm experience. This is perfect. All from that one paragraph that I gave it. It's giving me the actual context of what I want. So we're looking by geolocation metadata. That's perfect because that's exactly what we want to be able to do is upload that photo and have it tagged immediately for where that location is. So one of the nice things is that this isn't just visual, right? We're building the back end as well. We're building what we want to see. Figma won't do that part for us, but if we have this prompt, we can take what the result is and later put it into anti-gravity to help build out that back end because Figma is going to do the work of building as much of the prototype front end as possible, but it's not going to give us that back end that we want. So this is good to keep. And part of the reason that I like keeping this in a logged app like Gemini is it's going to remember that and I can come back to it and pull from it whenever I need to. So it automatically documents my process. And I love that. So important as UX designers to document as much of your process as possible. And that remains true when you're vibe coding. Don't forget that just because it's now easier to iterate on your ideas and have prototypes come up. So let's see. It's giving us meaning to all of our colors and using all of those colors that we included. That's perfect. Let's see. We've got our landing page here, and then we've got our CTAs. It's building out all of this information, all from that one little prompt that we gave it. And that's why I love to do this in Gemini or any of the LLMs, is because it gives it way more context than I would be able to write out myself without spending, hours working at this. It's really going to speed up your workflow. So page 2, again, we're doing this. One thing that I didn't do in here, and I should have, is create a design system. And part of the reason for that is that when we create the design system, we want very clearly to document kind of what the the system we're working with from is. That way, when we go from Figma to anti-gravity to anywhere else that we're going, we have that to follow with us. It's not going to be something that we always visualize anymore, although I really encourage you to be able to do that. It's going to still be something that is very important for context and continuity when you're building an app. And I think that's something in vibe coding that doesn't get done enough is creating a design system. And I'm going to tell it to include that in the prompt. And remember, you can iterate as much as you need to in order to get kind of that result that you want. So let's see, it's got this part and we're building the design system. We've got the gallery. Let's see. Tell it, no, I don't want it to code. Remind it what it's doing, right? We want to give it as much context as possible so that it gives us the result that we want. So we want to be very specific. All right, so it says the master Figma make prompt. All right. So it's going to continue the roll, which I love that it's going to continue the roll over. It didn't quite get quite as dramatically, but that's okay. So we're going to go ahead and copy all of this. And actually, I don't like this prompt because it didn't give me as much detail. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and take this original, whoops, this original one here, which is more specific. And then I will copy all of this and we're going to go over to our Figma home here. And we're going to go up to the corner right here and click Figma Make and click on Figma Make. And this is also, I don't know if you guys have access, but Figma also has the ASU plan. And so you should have access to Figma Make. It does have the limited tokens, but it should give you kind of the ability to workflow and make some of these apps and see how things are going. So we're going to paste our prompt in here, and then we're going to go back and grab that other part where it said, where's our design system? Here we go. All right, this part here. And we're going to add in our design system, and we can add as much context as possible here. So if you have inspiration things or more than one prompt, you can add it in here and be able to give it as much context right from the get-go as possible. One of the things about coding with an LLM is that the LLM will start to lose context and break down because it's compressing each of your messages and summarizing them as it works through. So the more that you add to it, the more it compresses and it loses information that way. And eventually it loses enough information that it doesn't really remember all of the things that you're adding in. So as much as possible, we want to add in context to the original, and we'll have to remind it along the way of what we're doing. So let's go ahead and press go and see what it creates for us. One of the things that we've noticed when creating apps like this is going to take quite a bit of time. And so while we're doing this, we're going to go ahead and set up some of our other stuff. I know a lot of people are worried about, how is workflow going to change because of including AI into a traditional coding workflow or traditional design workflow. And one of the things we've noticed is that it creates the ability to have to context switch a lot, which of course, as UX designers, we know that's not a great thing for our minds. But I want you to be aware that as you're working through this, that there's a lot of context switching going on. And you need to create a system to be able to track and understand like what you're doing, where you're at in your workflows, and remember not to overwhelm yourself with too many projects. I know people who are working on 4 projects at once now because they have different LLMs going that's coding for them. And so they, do a prompt and send that one off. And then they have to context switch and do a prompt and send that one off and continue to come back to each one as it's having an issue or has something going on or needs your input again. So just be aware of that as you're kind of going along with your workflows now. All right, so we're going to go ahead and create a GitHub repo. And this is going to be our place where we're going to store all of the information on our app and store each iteration for it. So I'm going to click the button that says New, and we're going to name our app. And so since we're doing this as a kind of a national park journal, we're just going to name it on, oops, and we don't want spaces. So keep in mind, everything has to be in one long chain. And try to be creative with your names. I haven't done this project before, so the name is available. We're going to give it a short description. And instead of us doing that, we're going to use our LLM to be able to do that. Oh, hey, it actually came back really fast today. This is a lovely design system, but it did not give us our actual app. So this is great. And we're going to go ahead and tell it, this is great. Now create the web app. There is no workflow that I have found that creates the same result every time. I always get surprised by whatever Figma Make brings back to me. Um, and so it's really interesting to see, like when we did a dry run of this the other day, it didn't create the design system, but it did create the web app, and we had to go back and build the design system anyway. So it's interesting that it built this. And it's actually giving us a React router installed. Perfect. So it does look like it's going to use React, which makes me happy. That's fine with me. All right. Now I'm going to say, whoops, create a short, whoops, GitHub repo description. There we go. And it actually named our app for us, which I kind of love. Maybe we'll change the name of our repo then. Oh, and that's too long. We're just gonna take off some of this. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna tell it we need 350 characters because that'll be easier. Make it under 350. One of the nice things about vibe coding is that you don't have to be very precise with it. It understands a lot about what you're trying to do, and makes your life a little bit easier. That can cause issues sometimes, but at least it, you know, you don't have to spend all of the time making everything perfect. We're going to change the name. Terralog. There we go. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and make this public. That way, if you would like to go ahead and later clone this repo, you can. And we're going to give it a git ignore. Actually, are we? We're going to do that later. Licensing, I'm going to give it, I think we'll do this one for today. And create the repository. One of the things about licenses is it determines what people are allowed to do with your repo. If you make your information public, it defines kind of who can use it, what they can do with it. So be aware and kind of know your licensing before you use it. I may actually go back and change this later just based off of being able to allow everybody to go and use it and pull from it freely and do what they want with it. We're not going to add a README right now. We'll actually do that with our vibe coding, so you don't need to worry about any of that. What we are going to do is copy the GitHub repository from right here. If we go to code and grab it here, we're going to pull that down. That way we can give it context when we're ready to work with anti-gravity, and it will automatically connect. Whoops, wrong spot. Hang on. There we go. All right, so let's go see what our system is doing. And it's still working on building, which is pretty normal. And this is the part where people really get into that kind of workflow stage of working on multiple projects at the same time or working on several um, kind of different workflows at the same time. It's a lot about how you're occupying your time. But right now, while this is building, does anybody have any questions really quickly? Looking in the chat. Sorry, my chat's off to the side, so it keeps looking like I'm looking over, but oh, actually, I really like what it did. One issue I'm flagging is that this is not readable text. So we are going to have it change that. So I'm going to tell it this text, and I'm going to give it the text that that I'm referring to, just so that it has kind of a concept of what I'm talking about. So this is not readable. And one of the things I really like to do is use screenshots in my workflows because it helps better give context to what I'm working about. One thing you need to note though is that that does use up more of your tokens. So be aware that there's more processing power that has to get used in identifying an image with computer vision than if you're just talking to it. So use that sparingly. And we're going to go ahead and let it know that that text is not very readable. I can tell it things that it's not user friendly, give it a description of what I'm seeing and why it's not working, especially if it's not understanding me. The more kind of context you can put in there, the better in the situation. The one time that is not true is if you are generating images. Oh, that's much better. If you're generating images, you need it to be less descriptive. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but that is one of the things that just does not work well with AI is when you're prompting image generation, at least right now. All right, so let's go ahead and click on join the journey. Now it missed the login page, but that might not matter because it's giving us a fake user already. And that's fine because we actually put that fake user into our prompt. We gave it a user, and so I think it's actually trying to create this demo based off of that user. That's something that works great for our prototyping, but we'll see what happens when we put that in anti-gravity. So it's given us the page like I asked it to, where we have multiple different parks, and it's even given us placeholder images, which I think is really cool. Um, Whether or not these are generated or not, I actually don't know. It's kind of interesting. I'm not sure where it got some of those. A few months ago, when you were using Figma Make, you didn't actually have image generation. You had to be the one to upload those images. And I think in a later version of this kind of conversation, we'll actually go into creating a repository, or not a repository, there we go, but a file folder of inspiration so that you can kind of give your Figma Make better inspiration. Um, so let's see. This is the part where your usability study comes in, right? You're going to look and see um, what's working, what's not. And this is where your human insight is so important because we've created something and it functions. We can click through it, but there's certain things that we as UX designers know is not right. So like the text here being in teal, not readable. This is not going to pass accessibility at all. So that's something that we can change, and we're going to tell it here and iterate. Let's see, the location tag. Uh, I'm going to give it, whoops, go back here. I'm going to tell it to search the whole app for accessibility. And again, my spelling is atrocious. You'll have to bear with me. All right, well, it's doing that. Any other questions right now? Is everybody feeling pretty confident following along? I know this is a lot of information to take in right now. There's so much going on. And that's okay. Like I said, you're going to have the recording. You're going to be able to watch this back. I'm hoping as long as you've got a little bit of awareness of kind of like how coding goes, that you'll be able to follow along with this. And if not, we can always do this as an event again. Um, as this is going through, I do want to talk a few things, right? I've been talking about a lot about how Figma is creating this as a prototype. And even what we're going to create when we move this over into anti-gravity is still going to be a prototype. One of the things that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough in vibe coding is the fact that when you're creating an app with something, that's not including deployment. That's not including security. That's not including, whether that's displayable to everybody. It's not including any of the back end stuff. So you're not creating a database. You're not creating so many features that would normally be done by a development team. And those of you that are, developers yourselves, absolutely know that that is an imperative thing that you cannot forget. And right now, as you're creating this, Figma's not going to tell you, Gemini's not going to tell you. It's not going to tell you that you're missing parts of your app to get it ready for deployment or to get it ready for the public. One of the things that we've seen a lot is people will accidentally upload their API key and expose it to everybody, and all of a sudden they've got an $80,000 bill for, Claude or OpenAI or whoever it is. That's something you need to be really aware of. It's also not scalable, right? So we're building this, but there's nothing in this app that would be able to scale for the people that would be able to visit it, right? This app would ideally be used by millions of people. And there just isn't the framework built into this or what we'll put in anti-gravity about scaling it up. So that's one thing that we have to be very cautious about is just because you can see it doesn't mean that it's structurally sound. All right, so now it meets our accessibility standards, which is awesome. It's got screen reader support, clear visual focus, indicators, beautiful. And we see that that part that we were worried about changed, and I love that. Um, it does look like this is clickable now, so it takes us back to the page. Ideally, we would want to fix that because it should take us back to all the pages. It didn't do that. This would be the time that you want to click through everything, right? Make this as usable as possible. Use all of your skills as a UX designer, researcher, um, you know, developer, and make all of this as user-friendly as possible. But for the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and just give it a quick go through, see what we've got going on. We've got other photos. That's awesome. Let's see if we can get to our profile page. We cannot get to our profile page. I'm going to make one last iteration and add that profile page in. Page. All right. And then after this, we'll go ahead and we will download our code. And if you are a developer, you can always click over to code. Even if you're not, please always, take some time. Oh, hey, look, images are from Unsplash. It didn't generate them. It pulled them from Unsplash. Um, Take a look at your code. See what's happening behind the scenes. Look for what's going on. Even if you don't understand it yet, you'll start to. The more that you look at it and the more that you see things, you'll begin to understand and know. And you can always take any of your code and ask an LLM about it. Ask what's going on. Have it teach you what's happening so that, you're not just blindly following this. I know that the definition of vibe coding is to not look at the code. I don't know how many of you have heard that before, but if you ask for a definition of vibe coding, it's to be completely unaware of the code that you're using. And I think that's an absolute crime. I think that we all need to have some sort of context as to what's going on and what's being done behind the scenes. Get to know the different code, get to know what's happening so that when something goes wrong, you can help figure it out. Um, that's one of the things. Let's see here as it's going through. Um, Look at your integrations. This one is kind of interesting. I have not played around with this, but the GitHub integration I'm really excited to use because I think that that would help kind of move things along. We're not going to use this today, but ideally this would load into your GitHub and connect with it and go to your repo, and you could skip a lot of these steps, which would be really awesome. Okay, so now we should have a profile page. And look at that. Super fast. We have our profile page. It doesn't look like everything is clickable yet, but that's okay. Some of it is. There we go. All right. So I like that it's got a scorecard here. Let's go ahead and grab our code. So we'll go back to code and we're going to hit the download button right here. And we're going to talk briefly about file structure because this is really important to your vibe coding. You are going to download this to your computer. You need to have a very clear file structure of where you're putting this. You want to create a folder to put everything in because as you saw on, if I can move this, you saw here, we actually have multiple folders going on. And this has all of our different files and so forth. So we need a folder to host everything. And we called our app, what did we call our app? I can't remember now. Terralog, that's what we called our app. So we're actually going to rename this. Actually, I guess I have to save this here first. We'll do this and open and save it here. So everything's saved in our file folder. And now I'm going to rename it. Terralog. All right. So I have this under my projects in a vibe coding demo so that I can keep track of it. I know where it's going to be. I'm going to need to be able to access this all the time. And oh, we have a zipped folder. I forgot it always zips it. So we're going to unzip it really quickly. Extract all. And you guys can't see this part, so let me bring this up here. We're going to click extract. There we go. Okay. So now I can delete this zipped file and everything will be here just like it is here in our files right here. So we've got our guidelines, we've got SRC. If we open up SRC, we're going to have all of this information in here, just like it is there. And that's going to be really important for our next step. So next, we're going to go to anti-gravity. How many of you have heard of anti-gravity before, just out of curiosity? Anybody? All right. Not until now. That's okay. Anti-gravity is one of those lesser known ones, but it's incredibly powerful. I prefer this one over cursor. I don't know if you've heard of cursor yet. Cursor is like the big one where it was like, oh, this is the vibe coding like environment, code environment. Claude Code was a big one. They all kind of do similar things, but anti-gravity so far has been my favorite. So we're going to go ahead and click Open Folder, and we're going to navigate back to our file. And this is why you need to know your file systems. So here's our Terralog, right? And actually, I'm going to go back one. Maybe I am. There we go. So I've selected Terralog. Yeah, it is free. And we're going to select the Terralog as our folder. And click Yes. Actually, I'm going to click this one. Yes, I trust the author. This comes up every time. It's really important because as you are now, we've moved from editing files online, right, with Figma Make to now we're editing files on our computer. So we need to be very cautious about the files that we're picking and the location of things so that we're not touching our root folders. We're not touching anything that's actually going to be able to affect our computer directly. So this is why it's important to establish your file path and know where you're going. And that's just a nice little reminder about that. And so I don't know if this actually updated. If we open up here, we have, again, all of our information. And I do not want CloudSeek right now. That's extra extensions that you can add in to help track or help log or help create things. So the first thing that we're going to do is if I click my README file, we really don't have a whole lot in our README file right now. And one thing that I think is super important is that you kind of create systems that tell people what your app is about, what your intentions are, what you're doing. This is all part of documentation. And it's super important because as you pass this over to your development team, as you kind of hand this project over to other people, you need to have context and you need to have documentation of what you're doing, what your intent was, why are you building this? How do they use it? What kinds of things do they need to know in order to interact with your build? So we're going to ask anti-gravity here to create the README file. I'm going to say, take a look at everything. Actually, I should say rewrite because I want to be specific about what I'm doing. It's already created one. There's already a README there. All right. I do this step as twofold, right? I need a README file, but I also want to make sure that anti-gravity is able to read all of the code that Figma make created. So this kind of gives it a chance to go through, look through everything, determine what's there, and make kind of decisions and understanding in a deep way about what's going on. So it's currently doing progress. And one of the things that happens through vibe coding that you're going to notice is that your workflow is going to change every single time that you use a vibe code system. So I'll come in here one day and things have changed, right? The progress has changed, the process has changed. So play around with it. Feel okay asking anti-gravity questions in here. One of the best things is that if I don't understand what's happening or if I want it to tell me what's going on, I can actually ask and say, hey, tell me what you're doing. Tell me what's going on. Just in a few days, the position of this has changed. So there's no like real way to, you know, have an identical lesson every time. This happens and iterates so quickly. So knowing the general information is great, but you're really going to have to kind of play around with things and not be afraid to ask questions in the LLM so that you can kind of understand what's changed, what's new every single week. All right, so it's saying that it wants to make a change. Let's see what's going on. It's telling me it's identified that we were using React, Vite, Tailwind. It says it understands the project structure. We can go ahead and preview it and preview the changes. If it's red here, this is what it's changing from, and now the green is what it's changing to. So it's talking about all of this. I would prefer to have a longer, deeper README, but this is going to be okay for now. So we're going to accept the changes. You want to at least have information about kind of what is going on, what's happening. You could vibe code this and just say accept all, accept all, accept all every time, or have it accept everything. But people work themselves into corners that way. Sometimes the LLM goes, oh, wait a second. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to start from scratch and tries to delete everything. And you really want to prevent that. One way to help prevent that is to make sure that you are refreshing your agent a lot, right? Because if you get to about 50 back and forth with your LLM, things start to compress and you start to lose context, and the LLM starts to kind of drift into territory that you don't want it to. All right, so it says typically it's at this. It's just kind of interesting. We're going to see if we can load it in this space. And actually, can I I'm going to have it do this. All right, so here's the situation. It says typically we're going to that local host, which is correct, but we want to see if we can actually get the LLM to give us a link. So I want to see this in my browser. All right. And remember, this is still sitting on my computer. This is not on the web. Even though we're going to look at this in our browser, this is still running on my computer. If I were to share this, like say this right here, right, this is the local host. Anybody I share this with is not going to be able to see it because they don't have a connection to my computer. So keep that in mind if you aren't familiar with coding. A lot of times I see people going, oh, I created this app. It's beautiful. It's perfect. And they share a local host uh, address. And you go, wait, I can't see that. And it's difficult. So again, just a reminder, we have not set up security on this. We have not set up any of those things. It's not deployed anywhere. It is not scalable. This is still just a prototype. And later we can talk about kind of how do you move from a prototype to a deployed app. But that is a long process, and we won't have time for that today. All right, while this is still thinking, everybody doing okay? Everybody following along? I haven't heard from anybody in a minute. Does this feel like it's at least like something that you are ready to give a try for? Cynthia says yes. Awesome. Okay, I'm glad. I'm glad. I hope this helps to kind of get through that first process of making something, because I feel like that's the hardest part, is just kind of diving in. There's so many things. I mean, we've already been through what, 5 different apps. Um, and it doesn't have to be this way, but the more kind of things that you're able to add in that are specific to your purpose, I feel like gives better kind of ability to use them. So, like I said, if one workflow breaks down, you have another way to get there, and another way to continue working. And I feel like that's something that's really, really important to be able to have, is there's not, you know, just one way to do this. There's tons of apps right now that are all working on vibe coding, all working on different ways to make life easier. I think Google just came out with a new one, and for the life of me, I cannot remember what the name of it is. Um, but where it does a design process for you, right? And kind of creates that prototype app. But again, it's really important, just as we saw when we were going through Make, that it's not perfect at this, and it needs that human insight to be able to kind of give that understanding of, you know, is this accessible? Is this doing what the workflow that makes sense? Like, are people, oh, thank you, Stitch. Yeah, that's the new one. Thank you, Kat. Um, you're still going to need that human insight. You're still going to need that ability to go through and make that determination of what is working, what's not. All right, let's take a look at our app. So I clicked the link that anti-gravity gave me, and it's going to pull it up and see about loading here. It's really slow right at the moment, but hey, here is our lovely app. Um, Ideally, from a design standpoint, this is too much, but that's okay. So let's look and see what we've got. Everything looks pretty much exactly like our code that we got from Figma, right? We're still looking the same. Back to gallery. Terralog. If we go here, it looks pretty much the same, which is awesome. So we know, go back. Whoops. Sorry, guys. I have a Zoom in my way, so it's making it hard for me to click on things. Okay, here we are, back at our app. Still on the local host, which is perfect. All right, we can go to recent entries. This is beautiful. Thing that I see is we have so much white space still going on, and I really don't like that. So what I'm going to do is iterate now in anti-gravity, and I'm going to have it take a picture so that I can give it context, and go back here, and I'm going to say, hey, this is too much white space. Give me a scrapbook frame for the journal pages. And then I'm going to tell it that I'm going to give it some context. Oops. And I'm going to go back to my Gemini, and I'm going to go ahead and grab that original prompt that I was working with. Let's see. So copy all of this information. Here we go. Go back to anti-gravity. And I'm going to say this is the original prompt. All right, so this should help give it some information, and we'll see what happens as we do this. So I gave it an instruction. I gave it context. It's going to go through and create a plan. And sometimes it'll have me approve the plan. Sometimes it won't. I'm actually going to close the README here. Here is our task list. So it's analyzing the photo that we gave it. Does it show? I don't think it shows here. Maybe it did. Maybe I forgot to put it in there. All right. Let's see. Okay. So it's going through and making that decision. I don't know if I gave it this. Nope, that's not it. No, apparently not. Okay. So it's created this and decided what it needs to do, and it's going to go through and each one of those tasks it's going to check off. So we can just leave it here. And when we go back after it's finished all of this, we can take a look and see what it's changed. This might take a minute just because iterations. One of the things you can do is you don't have to use Figma Make, right? You can kind of do this in anti-gravity, but there is going to be more of, uh, I guess, more difficulty with it. What is it doing? All right, go ahead. Let's see, it has completely redesigned the photo detail journal page to match the scrapbook frame style that we requested. So let's go take a look. Oops. Oh, wow. All right. That's interesting. That definitely reduced our white space. I like that it has the dotted lines there, just like if it was a journal. It's got our little washi tape corners. That's super cute. And the photo even moves a little bit. I love that little detail. I know, it's really cool. So that's really awesome. Let's see, is it like that on all pages? Yes, it is. All right, let's look up for one that has multiple pictures. All right. So I assume we'd be able to click through. One thing that would be nice is I realize we can click here back and forth, but let's say we have 50 photos. We need a way to scroll through them. So let's go ahead and iterate on that. I'm going to tell the LLM it did great. Oops. Now I need a way to scroll through pictures. And I'm going to go back and give it context really quickly because this is the page that I'm talking about, right? See if I can actually do it this time. And go back here. Oh, it's not going to let me do that, is it? There we go. Finally got it. All right. Let's have it make a carrot to scroll. Imagine if there were 50 photos. Make it user-friendly. See what it does. Oh, one thing that I forgot to have it do, and I should have done this earlier because it might take a minute. We're gonna go back. I forgot to connect it to the GitHub. Whoopsie. All right. Analyzing. It's thinking through things. Everybody still following along okay? Oh, perfect. Let's see, where are we? All right, so there we go. It corrected my spelling. How lovely. Thank you. Thank you, anti-gravity. Let's see. All right, let's go take a look, see what it did, see the changes it made. Um, well, it put them in an awkward spot, which is super helpful. Um, and it's not working. So we need to go back and tell it, hey, what you did, no good. All right. Simple, quick little, hey, you didn't do it quite right. Let's see what it comes back with. A lot of the workflow now is iterating on the small details just like this. And ideally, you should still be creating branches in order to make small changes. But since we haven't connected it to GitHub yet, it's not going to do that. That was a step that we should have done earlier. And we'll do that next and see if we can't have it pull a branch for the next one. Let's see what it's doing. How are we doing on time? Oh, right at an hour. Okay. All right, so remove the non-functioning scroll buttons. Um, Perfect. All right, let's see how that goes. It's changing the file. It's thinking. There we go. It goes, oh yeah, this is what you meant. Let's see if it actually did what we meant. It did. All right, and they're functional now. Beautiful. All right, that's much better. All right, so let's go ahead and go back. Oops, I need to grab my GitHub again because I copied. I'm going to tell it to connect with my already created. All right, so now it's going to take some time and see if it can connect. Ideally, you want to do this at the beginning of your workflow. I just spaced it today. I spaced it on the last one I did too. I need to write up a little like workflow thing for myself just because it's easy to forget. I get in the flow of things and then go, oh yeah, there was this step that I needed to do. And perfect. It's creating that get ignore, which we need. Um, Get ignore, if you're not aware, is something that's very important to add. It hides the things that you don't want to share. So that's where you would put your API key or something along that line of, information that you are not going to share with the public, but your app still needs to have access to run. Let's see what we got. Right.
This is going to be a really stupid question, but what is an API key?
No, there's no stupid questions here. API key is where you're connecting to an outside service. So if we were to add AI integration into our app, we could use a connection to, say, like a Claude or an Open AI API key, which
Mhm.
is like a secret code that you go and you get from their service. Um, that then you can bring back and connect to your app so that it's running things, right? So we can have our, let's say we get an open API.
So
Let me
it's
try this
similar
again.
to a dongle key.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay,
it's like a secret code that connects, and every time it's called upon, right, it can charge
right.
you. So like if you're using those services, that'll charge you. You
So
can connect it to weather services or different things to be able to run different tasks.
so just from my understanding, um, so this key, why would you put it in there in the first place so other people can grab the key and adjust it or have it? I'm just trying to.
No. So that key is basically like a tool that your app would use.
Okay.
So I created an app the other day where it needed to run an AI analysis of people's resumes and job
Okay.
descriptions.
Okay.
And to be able to do that, instead of me creating my own LLM that was analyzing all of this, I used a Claude API key so that the app would use Claude like a tool
Hmm.
and say, hey, go analyze these things. And Claude would say, oh, okay, here's my analysis. And then it would send back that information to my app
Okay.
and be able to have the analysis there. So I'm not running that LLM. I'm not using that processing power. I'm renting processing power from Claude and I'm using them as a tool. The same thing as if you're connecting to a weather app or an RSS feed,
Okay.
where you kind of need to pull in information or use a tool that's not built into your app.
So just for my understanding, like for example,
Uh-huh.
if I go excuse me, getting over a cold. So if I
You're fine.
go into like my computer and I like my iPhone and they have like some sort of weather channel map thing on it, they would use something like that to connect it to or any other source. Like if
Right,
the
yeah. So if you're developing like a an app that uses a map, right? You
right.
wouldn't want to go through the process of having to go out into the world and map everything yourself. It's much
Yeah.
easier to connect to Google Maps and be able to
Right.
pull a map from their system
Okay.
that all the work's been already done, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like that
Updates and
connector.
everything. That makes
Yeah.
sense. And you
Yeah.
wouldn't want to share something like that with anybody because which is
Right.
that's where
So
I'm confused because technically you're sharing. I know technically you're at putting it in there so they can connect, but yet how
yes.
and exactly do you prevent anybody else from getting that key? That's the
So
part
that's where
where
you're putting it in your hidden file, basically. So you're creating a
okay,
file that's hidden, um, excuse me, so that your app has access to it, but it's not displayed. So if I were to post my API key for Claude to the internet, right?
hmm
Uh, Anybody could come and grab that key and then
right,
go and connect it to their app or connect it to their whatever or use it, in any way that they want and rack up all of these fees that I'm paying for because I pay for every token that goes through that API key.
okay,
So then it would
mm,
charge me all of that money. And that's how people end up racking up these, huge bills is they say, "Oh, I'm going to spend $10 to run my
mm.
tiny little app over here a month." And somebody grabs that API key and connects it and racks up like huge amounts of money that
So
is then, you have to
let
pay
me
for.
ask you this: is there any
Yeah.
chance you can cap it off so something like that doesn't happen? Like say, okay, I'm only going to spend $10, and if I go over, don't use the service. Is that a
Yeah,
possibility?
most I was gonna say most services, it's not all. A lot of
Most.
services have a cap. But let's say that you're working for a mid-sized company and you've built an app for them that's fully functional and their cap is $10,000 a month.
Mhm.
And, all of a sudden somebody comes and steals that API key and uses all 10,000 of that at the beginning of the month. And now
Ooh,
they can't use their app at all because their budget for it is gone. You really
right.
want to be protective of those keys and protective of that information. Not only so that, you're preventing costs, but so that you're preventing people from misusing your key and it coming back to you. So there's a lot of reasons to kind of protect that and keep it secret. You just want to be very careful about not including those things where the public can see it. So if you're not comfortable with it yet, ask your LLM and say, listen, I know I need to be protective of this, or I know I need to set security. What can I do, and how can I protect myself or protect this app from stuff like that? And it'll tell you, it'll give you a really good answer as to how you can create strategies to create that security behind there.
Okay. S- That is very interesting. Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like we're at this stage where there's so much opportunity and so much vulnerability built in behind that, right? If you were to successfully deploy this app, right,
Mhm.
and take it to launch and do all of those things, it would immediately crash when you all of a sudden have, uh, 150 people using it or 500 people using it, and it's not built into that scalability. So those are things you need to take into account, and that's why it's really important to have developers and other people on your team, you know, data architects, people that know the ins and outs of those things, that maybe you haven't thought of or maybe AI hasn't told you about yet. So
Welcome to the Wild Wild West.
very much so, yes, very, very much so.
Thank you.
So let's see. Yeah, of course. Anybody have any other questions really quickly before we move on? Everybody still good? I'm looking through here. I think everything's connected. We'll go check. There we go. Look, all of our files uploaded to our GitHub. So now it's not just on my computer, it's on my GitHub. So if I were to share this and hand this off to a developer, I would be able to share this repo with them and add them to it so that they could then take it and start to add to it and build that backend and go through and see what's not working, what do we need to build scalability in this, things of that sort. So that it would be able to kind of move from prototype to actual, you know, functional working app, build the database that would be needed for that profile, right? Because right now we have one user and we can only have one user. That's all that's built into this. We would need to create a secure way of storing user passwords, user names, like their whole profile information. If you aren't able to take those security steps to kind of protect that information, that sets you up as a creator, as being vulnerable for somebody coming after you and saying, "Hey, you didn't protect my information. You were supposed to do these things." We haven't set up anything, you know, regulation wise, about, you know, how do we use people's information? What's the cookie policy? All of the GDP stuff. None of that's involved in our app, even though it looks like it's a happy functioning app. Oops, let me see if I can get back there. So even though we have this, even though it's clickable, even though it's on our browser, all of these things, even if we were to take this to a deployment app and get this deployed and have a domain and all of those things, right? It's still just a prototype. It's still not a fully functional app. And I think that that is part of the process of all of this is now where you would go and you would run your usability studies. You would go through and get some users to test this and see what's working, what's not. And still use AI, right? You're still using AI to kind of help you do this. We could take this and go back to Google Gemini and say, if we got this deployed, we could take it back to Google Gemini and say, hey, okay, run a usability study on this. Tell me what you're seeing. What are the heuristics that I'm missing? Um, and have it do that analysis and be able to tell us what's going on with it and get one step closer to actual human users, right? So it's speeding up that workflow that would have taken you months to do. And you've been able to do this in a couple of hours. Anybody have any questions right now? I think we're about at the end of our journey. So if there's something that like you're curious about or something that's come up, like please ask. Look, our fax doesn't work. We forgot to build that page. This is why that usability is so important. Is there
I
anything that we
guess
didn't cover today? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say we could also wanted to mention that another use case for building like a vibe coded app, you could, if you wanted to show this as kind of like a proof of concept for
Mm-hmm.
your team and just to create buy-in before they actually invest resources into building an app like this, that's also a the reason why vibe coding is so powerful because you're able to put a fully functional app like this that's like more powerful than just like a clickable prototype. And yeah, you're able to create buy-in from like leadership and the rest of the team that before they actually invest resources into building an app like this. So that's the way that like my company uses like vibe coding now is before they even start building and before we even start designing, because I think it's important to talk about like how um, like vibe coding doesn't necessarily replace like designers or developers, but it is changing the way like the work is being done. So at my company, for example, like they might vibe code the concept that we're trying to work towards before they actually loop in, before they actually spend the resources to like get a UX designer to build out the whole user experience for the whole app, or get development to build, all of these features. It's really helpful to get like, the conversation going of like, is this worth it? Like, can we test this with users? So you can see why like, vibe coding can be a really useful skill in the workplace, especially in corporate and tech.
Yeah, definitely. And it does give you that jump start to be able to iterate quickly. And I think that that's a really important skill to be able to have is can you come up with your concept and then can you make changes, rapidly? This saves a ton of development time. It saves a ton of design time in the process.